What's up, friendly neighborhood nerds? This is Rhi Spawn. I'm here with Glynis and Ainsley from the mods team. Glynis, do you want to give a quick intro to our viewers?
Hi, I'm Glynis, or G. I hang out mostly in the IFLC Facebook groups, mostly in the book group. So come and tell me what to read. Or you can catch me maybe in the Discord doing some World of Warcraft streaming if you want to see me killing gnolls for hours.
Always. Ainsley, do you want to say hi to our viewers?
Hi, I'm Ainsley. I'm also usually findable in the Facebook groups, and I collect comics and penguins, and occasionally comics about penguins.
Oh, so cute, so wholesome. Today we're joined by a very, very special guest, Joe Glass, creator of comics such as Glitter Vipers, Acceptable Losses, and The Pride, which is what we're probably going to be talking about the most today. Ainsley, do you have... Actually, I should make you hold up your book if you've got it.
Yeah, I do actually.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It just came in on the truck today, and I'm so excited.
Yes.
I really, really hope you enjoyed it.
I have read the first few issues, and I loved it. We chatted a little bit about it on Twitter, and I'm just over the moon, so excited to read the rest of it.
Fantastic. Like I say, I hope for the rest of the series you enjoy just as much as those first few issues. But yeah, it was always been a joy to write, so it's always great when I see someone really enjoying it. So.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, congratulations, by the way, because that omnibus dropped on June the 2nd, right? Like a couple of days ago.
Yeah, literally just a couple of days ago now. So
yeah, congrats.
Yeah, it's been wild. Long time coming, but to see it finally have that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like access, I guess, out there. Because this series, obviously I started doing it as small press, self-published book. So I was literally just selling it at Comic Cons, which I was doing here in the UK. And now it's available in every bookstore, comic shop, and anywhere else in the whole world. So it's crazy.
Hell yeah, that's so cool. The Pride seems like very meta in the sense that it's about like representation in the superhero community, but it's also providing that representation in comics. So what was the germination of this idea? How did it first come to be?
A lot of the inklings of the series and what became the series actually started when I was in high school, and a teenager reading comic books. And I was obviously at that time going through my own sort of experiences of coming to terms with my own sexuality, my identity and everything. And although I loved certain books for very much reasons that were obviously because I recognized something of my personal experiences in them, there was nothing which was explicitly and openly about being a queer person in the superhero comic genre, because that's my favorite genre to play in, my favorite kind of medium. So for me, it always felt a little bit odd because it started to feel like it was this whole other kind of closet. They weren't saying that there was anything wrong with being queer or anything, but at the same time, they didn't want to talk about it, and they didn't want to have this kind of open representation of any kind. So you always got a metaphor or something which is analogous to being a queer person, and that's great and everything, is certainly a lot of really fun. But like I say, it just winds up becoming this other prison if you can't actually just say, no, actually this character is queer. So I was 15, maybe even 14 when I first came up with some of the first characters. Fat Man was actually one of the very first characters I came up with, and I was exactly when I was a teenager myself, and sort of coming to terms with being a fairly obviously gay guy when I was 15. So it was very much a case of I'm playing with creating these characters and building from there.
Cool. Wow. So I'll see if either of our other mods have a question for you on Pride. Glynis or Ainsley, did you have anything you wanted to ask about this series in particular?
So not necessarily about the series. So Anyone who's known me for more than about 10 minutes will absolutely not be surprised to hear that Frost is my favorite character. It was love at first sight. Which of the characters is your favorite?
Obviously I love all of them to some extent because, like, say, they're all my babies. This whole book is, you know. So, but they've definitely still always got a soft spot for Batman. Like I say, he's very much the first character, so there's that element. But there's also an element that he's built up a lot by not just myself, but also people I know and a lot of my friends, particularly while I was growing up. And what I found was particularly interesting with that character, the more I wrote him, was there was stuff about him which was, I felt like I was feeding into him, but there was stuff about him which was feeding back to me. So back when I started making this book, and particularly when I was like a teenager coming up with these characters, I was not as flamboyant as I come across most time. And you see me at Comic-Con covered in glitter and the shiniest sequins and everything. I used to dress all in black. I constantly just really dour sort of gothy kid. And
Me too.
yeah, and it was just like it's been so weird like all these years, but doing Batman, who's this like complete opposite, sort of starting to feed back into me, and me sort of showing a lot more color and a lot more sort of vibrancy and flamboyance myself, because it was almost like he let me be comfortable with that. So there's this little bit of a special connection with Batman, and plus he's a really interesting character as well, but he also gets the most backlash of any of the characters because he's so visibly gay, and so what many would consider the stereotype, and how everyone seems to perceive these stereotypes as being inherently negative or bad. But the thing with a stereotype is a stereotype isn't inherently negative. It's more how a stereotype is used that is negative or bad. And like one of the things I hope to do with the Pride was that I play with these stereotypes quite a bit and sort of break people's ideas of what to expect with them. And with Batman, it became this thing of seeing particularly a lot of gay men in particular being angry at this particular visual, and it was sort of became a realization that there's this kind of deep set anti-femme, anti-camp, and kind of idea in the gay community, which needs addressing and needs sort of being pushed back against, in my opinion, just as much as queer representation in the wider, broader world. So like Batman for me is like the character which does all of that. So yeah, he's still, I love them all, but he's still very much my favorite.
I love it.
Yes. That's so sweet. Glennis, I've got a question, but I just want to check that you don't have one before I jump over you.
Well, since we're talking about Fabman, I want to. So if this were to get adapted, who would you cast as Fabman? Like, who could be that character?
There's actually two different people who I would love to see in it. One who I've seen him in a lot more things, so I kind of feel like he definitely had the acting chops. And then another guy who I've actually not seen in many things, but every time I see him, he screams Batman to me. So the first would be Matt Bomer.
Yes! Sorry.
The second, like I said, this is the guy who I haven't seen in a great deal, but every time I see him scream Batman, is Andrew Reynolds. And I think like a bit working out and everything, and like bulking up to get into that pink onesie, he would look absolutely fabulous as Batman. So yeah, those would probably be my two casts. It's always been my thing where if we got to adapt the series anyway, I will want it to be an all queer cast. So hopefully one day.
I love that.
I'm just gonna say I would punch any three randos on the street right now for Matt Bomer to get cast as Batman. That would be incredible.
I think he'd be really good to do it with him as well. But I also think the Matt Bomer would actually be good for Wolf. So like he would be good as either Batman or Wolf, like I say, because he has that sort of level of gravitas that I think that he could pull off either the flamboyant and funny and kind of silly kind of lead of Batman, or he could pull off the more serious or straight. Well, that's wrong. Well, maybe the right term to use. Straight man lead of Wolf to Batman's more comic sort act, as it were. So I kind of feel like Matt Bomer could potentially do both of those. Like, maybe not in the same film, but
but he's got to be there somewhere.
Oh God, he's in there somewhere for sure.
So I need to know, with this series, you have worked with so many incredible artists, and a huge amount of artists too in the Pride. Like, what's your priority when you're selecting different art teams? What are you looking for when you're going through that process?
Well, a lot of why, particularly that first season of the Pride, was so many different artists, was because obviously that was the time when I was self-publishing it, which meant that like the issues didn't come out with the sense of regularity. Remember, I couldn't necessarily get an artist to be able to commit that amount of time to the whole series, so maybe they do an issue or even in some cases a scene. So a lot of it became bred out of necessity. But then what also I thought was interesting was it became very much a community of people making this book about community. And in a way that kind of just felt like, well, just felt right for part of it. Obviously going forward, certainly with each season, and as you see in season 2, I hope that we get a single artist per season, so it has more of a seasonal aspect to it. So that's kind of one thing, is like going forward, it'd be finding an artist who could commit to the entire season run. But for me, the main things is I just look for a level of quality in the work that would be on a par with like an issue of X-Men or Avengers or Justice League. So I just wanted the idea that this book would feel completely in the right place next to those kind of titles. So I tend to look at going for art which is not necessarily the standard in-house of a Marvel DC book, but close enough to it with its own little twist to sort of fit in alongside. But even then, like, it depends on the story, because like a few of the shorts we went for like artists with very much more indie styles, which more fitted into like just what fitted for the story. So like it kind of will depend on the story ultimately, but overall my main thing with Pride, particularly for the main story arcs, is that sort of element of something which is going to sit alongside a more mainstream superhero book, just to show that there's actually all kinds of people out there who are capable of doing it. They just need the opportunity to do so.
Oh, I love that. That's such an amazing answer. I need to ask, because I'm sure you have a lot of, like, speaking about your message and what you want to get across to people. Obviously, that's something that's really important to you. I'm sure you have a lot of young queer people that look up to you and see you as a role model. So I want to know, like, what comics would you recommend that aren't necessarily your own? Like, what got you into reading comics? And maybe, like, if you have any advice for kids that want to create like you.
I mean, in terms of like what kind of comics to check out, although like there's not always a lot of immediate queer representation of the books, like the X-Men books as a series is just generally great for any kind of queer kid who's wanting superhero stories, but with that sort of like queer element, because I mean, it's way more queered up these days, and it's like way better than it used to be when I was a teenager. And there's a lot more actual visible queer characters there. But certainly, like, one strong thing that X-Men does is it's got that kind of good analogy to the queer experience, that for queer readers, there's that whole other level they can connect to it on. Plus, I think the X-Men series have this whole empathetic level to them, because the X-Men metaphor isn't specifically a queer metaphor, it's more of a minority metaphor. So, and that's for any kind of minority in society. So like say there's a lot of like a female metaphor, there's a lot of a black metaphor in there, and you kind of think like, well, this is going to be a really good way for people to start to understand maybe different viewpoints. And so like X-Men for me is always, pretty much any of the X books is definitely a good one. I mean, like, if anyone wants to read the one which specifically got me addicted to comic books and superhero comic books in particular, then it'd be Generation X from 1996. Like that series literally is what got me addicted. And I was actually doing an interview today, and it was something which literally occurred to me like off the cuff in mid-interview, which was that I think that was the first time that the queer metaphor was being a lot more not upfront, because it still wasn't, they weren't openly explicitly saying it, and certainly none of the characters in Gen X were LGBTQ at the time. But it was a case of just like they went with a lot of these queer issue ideas. So like they basically had this whole, like one scene which always stood out to me was like Husk, when she first finds out about the legacy virus. And she like goes off the deep end. Like she's the very much prim, proper, like kind of buttoned up kind of character. And she gets drunk because she just thinks like, oh my God, there's this terrible virus out there and I'm going to get it because I'm a mutant. And like being a gay kid in the 90s, that was exactly what all of us felt like. Like, oh God, I'm gay, I'm going to get AIDS. And that was like what that legacy virus metaphor was. Mm-hmm. So I remember reading that probably when I was about 14, 15. And like it hit me like a truck, because it was just like, I so get this. And it's probably really only now as I get older, but I'm just like, oh, that's why I got it, because there was this whole other thing I was like subconsciously dealing with, just because of the way things were in the world. So yeah, like that would be a good one. In terms of like other titles, if you want something with like specifically LGBTQ inclusion and representation, one of my favorites is an old Vertigo book, which I think is being redone by Dark Horse later this year, called Enigma, which is a really fantastic book exploring ideas on identity, and sort of particularly becomes a queer identity. And it's a really quirky book, and the artwork's by Duncan Fegredo, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, that would be a really good one to check out, I'd say.
That sounds sexy. it's in my head.
I'll say that it actually is, because it's a Vertigo title, so it's a mature title. So yeah, it does get a bit sexy at times.
Nice. I can't wait to read that. I'm so excited. I love these like super comprehensive answers. I know Ainsley is dying to pick your brain on a certain Kickstarter.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I saw this this come up, and I read the description. I love the whole comic character, but in the real world idea is it just makes me so happy. And I saw your Kickstarter, and I backed it, and I watched time pass, and I'm watching the numbers, and I'm like, oh my God, it's not gonna make it. And I was so distraught, and you're like, there's 48 hours left. I'm like, I already bought mine out now. And then just like at the last second, boom, not only did it make it, it went over the line. And I know that it was your book, but it felt like it was Christmas for me. Like I was so happy and so excited that it made it, and I am dying for this book. And I would love for you to tell us about your upcoming project, The Miracles.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, if you're dying for the book already, you should see some of the art which Vince is turning in, because honestly, it's gorgeous. He's actually I just had a catch up today with his work, and he's about a third of the way through now. As you might have seen in a recent update I did for Backers Only, like he did this most absolutely insane double page spread. So everyone's getting extra pages now.
It was incredible. That was so good.
Almost a whole comic's worth of like retro comic material for the in-comic comic, which I'm just like, I did not ask you to do that. That was not necessary. But went all out, and he's just created the wildest, most incredible images. And honestly, it's just been astonishing to see what he's been turning out. So yeah, if you're excited about it before, like, prepare to get even more excited soon. But yeah, it was really, nail-biting, nerve-wracking experience, that whole Kickstarter campaign. Like, it was one of those weird, like, I've been finding that a lot of campaigns seem to be doing it this year, because a friend of mine's literally just run one, and his very much went down to the wire as well. And his was, again, this kind of, he's a kind of creator who's like nearly every Kickstarter he's done has been completely successful. So it's just like, what the heck's going on here? Like, why is this not getting like immediately funded? So it just seems to be a weird thing which is going on with comics Kickstarters this year in particular. But yeah, when obviously the Miracles was like one of the first which seemed to be starting this whole line of books, which of campaigns which are going through this. And yeah, I had sleepless nights. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if the book was going to happen. But then at the same time, that last day where everything just turned around, the weirdest thing was I was in work, so I couldn't really push it much. I think I had to actually stay on Twitter, like, people, can you please just RT it loads, because I can't post, I'm in work. And it was around my lunch break that we finally passed over the line, and oh my God, the amount of relief, it was insane. So yeah, it was a wild ride. That was probably the wildest Kickstarter I've ever done. But yeah, I'm excited for everyone to read The Miracles. It's probably a more mature take on superheroes than people would know from me from Save Pride. I mean, if there are books out there which maybe have similar feels, so like people who are enjoying books like Crossover and Invincible would probably be big fans of what winds up coming out in The Miracles. So yeah, I've got a lot of hopes for it. I hope once it comes out, everyone's happy with it, and once it's sort of one general thing about, you know, people sells well, because I'd love to tell maybe a couple more stories with those characters as well. So we'll see how it goes.
We were looking at the costumes before you hopped on this call. Like the costumes that you have in every series that I've read of yours is insane. Like part of me wonders, are you walking around every day just like in your head designing costumes for different people?
I wish I was. Like, I would love to have that level of skill. Like, it's very few of the characters that I've created or co-created have actually been designed by me. Usually it's kind of like, I'll say to an artist, look, here's the idea, here's the kind of thing I have in my head, but you know, you go for it and go wild. I kind of feel like as long as they're not sort of completely breaking the, well, no, I was going to say as long as they're not breaking the wheel, but then again, we had a character called Outrage who's very much in the backups and shorts of the Pride Omnibus, and when in the first story he appears in, he's a pretty general, big Hulkbuster style Iron Man armor. And then I had Chris Anker redesign him for his second appearance, and he created him with floating arms. And like, at first I was like, I really don't know. And then I was just like, no, actually that's brilliant, because I like immediately started thinking like, oh wait, the action sequences I could do with floating arms is going to be. So I was just, sometimes I literally have no idea, and then some artist will chuck this thing in front of me and I'm just like, what the hell? This is so cool.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I did doodle some. I'm a little bit of a doodler, not a very good artist at all. So there were a couple like Fat Man, a lot of what with the way we wanted to go with him came from like doodles in my sketchbooks from when I was a teenager. And then Gavin Mitchell came along and actually made him look absolutely fabulous. So,
oh, that's so cool. I feel like that's how comics are the most magical, is when you get that true collaboration of minds and yeah, really
exactly. It's when they start to sort of understand what you had in your head and translate it onto the page, which is just like, that's even brilliant. You know, that's what feels the most brilliant out of comic creation. The best part of it is that it's a collaborative process.
Yes, I love that. Glynis, do you have any questions before I wrap us up with one more?
It's not so much a question as just, one, I love your nails, and two, I really appreciate, like, especially with like Muscle Mary, is that, am I getting the name right? Yeah, that like, I appreciate that this looks like an actual human that like is strong. I love the proportions. I don't know. I just love seeing, like, this looks like it could actually be a real human.
Yeah, it's very much one of the things I really wanted to do, and it's something I want to sort of continue to focus on as the Pride in particular goes forward, because certainly season 2 we started to really sort of broaden it out more, and I'd love to continue doing it as if we get more seasons and get to do more, is this idea of a more intersectional idea of representation and diversity and inclusion. And that it means like including, I want to see the body types become more distinct between the characters. I want to see more elements of ethnicities being included. I want to see more people of different faiths being included, things like that. Like, it's one of those things where, like, if I was to go back and start Pride again, like, I would probably not have quite so many white people on the team, and maybe have a few more women, because it is pretty in my first season in particular, it's pretty male heavy, it's pretty white heavy, and I would love to start changing that. And certainly going forward, like season 2, we made a big push to sort of not just broaden the LGBTQ IA aspect that was being represented, but also other aspects of identity being included. So we like had more like a Japanese character was added. I got to include a Welsh character because it was about time I got to include a Welsh character in something.
We need more Welsh characters.
Exactly. This is why I keep on telling Marvel they've got to let me write Pixie. But yeah, it's been something I really want to see going forward, and like one of those big elements has been more the body diversity, and certainly it's like what kind of started building the ideas for when we went with the character of Mass in season 2 for Pride, which was dealing with a body dysmorphia issue, which a lot of men, and particularly a lot of gay men, suffer from, but a lot of straight men too. Like, so it's like one of those nights, somewhat more universal sort of topics, but it's a body dysmorphia issue, which is almost like a reverse anorexia, I can't think of the word then, almost like a reverse anorexia, where instead of trying to be thinner, men feel like they have to bulk up and become huge, and often trying to do it in very quick ways, which is very bad for their bodies. And like the fact that we as a society really praise that. You know, like how much of our media, when looking at men and saying how being masculine is good, and by ideas of what that masculine is and the images that we get for it, and then other things like looking at, say, an actor like Christian Bale, who puts his body through the ringer between every film he does, and people praise him for it, and it's just like, no, he's really destroying himself. And it's just like, that's not a healthy ideal. And it became a thing of like, yeah, we need to sort of, if the Pride's going to be a little bit of a platform to present issues and characters which don't often get to be talked about, then we should be looking at things like this as well, not just the LGBTQ community, but like other things which we don't talk about very much.
I know we have Faith now. We have our one fat character, but yeah, I would love to see. Give me a fat man. Give me a fat man superhero that like loves how he looks. That's what I've always loved about like Killer Croc. He knows he's beautiful.
Oh yeah,
so cute. Joe, what other projects can we expect from you in the future?
So obviously the big ones which I'm currently working on is making the Miracles as good as it can be. There's a few things which I'm working on. I'm hoping to get to do more seasons of Pride. I've certainly got plenty of ideas. And yeah, there's a few other things which are far too early stages, but I can't actually talk about them as yet. But I've just had a couple of logos designed, and I've just been speaking to a few editors. And yeah, it's been really great. So hopefully there'll be even more things to come from future. And what is perhaps most exciting is some of these things are perhaps story types and genres which people do not expect from me. So people get to see that I actually do a lot more than just superhero stuff. So
teaser.
Interesting.
So I think probably the ones which would be most likely to be seen before anything else would be expect some horror in the future.
Ooh.
Oh, damn. That's my genre.
You're speaking my language.
Yeah. Sign me up. Where can people find you? And we'll put some links in the description too, but if people want to come and check you out, where should they find you, Joe?
Probably the main one for me is Twitter. I'm a big tweet head, so if you want to follow me on Twitter, I am at Joseph Glass. Someone beat me to Joe Glass, so I'm Joseph Glass on Twitter. I also use Instagram quite a bit, and when I'm doing a Comic-Con, I tend to do a lot of cosplay photos, so like if people like seeing the awesome cosplayers just as much as I do, then follow my Instagram. You'll get to see them whenever I'm at a show, when shows come back. There I am at Joe Glass. And yeah, those are kind of my big ones, and there's always my website as well, which is joeglasscomics.co.uk.
Nice. I think I can speak for all of us. Ains, Glynis, feel free to jump in if I miss anything. But you can find all of us on all the things: Discord, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the corporate billionaire-funded cesspits. You can find us on YouTube, which is where you're probably watching this. Please subscribe and share it around. And please go and buy the Pride Omnibus or any of Joe's work from your local comic book store. Did I miss anything? Have I covered everything? Glynis, Ainsley?
Yeah, please get the Pride Omnibus. That would be amazing. And if you actually got the Pride Omnibus and it's your first time seeing my work and you've enjoyed it, my website, which I mentioned a second ago, actually has a lot of my other stuff is independent self-published. So yeah, feel free to come grab that. If you love the Pride Omnibus, you're going to love Glitter Vipers for sure. So yeah,
thank you. And Joe, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
No worries. It's been fantastic. Thanks for having me.
We love it. We're huge fans, obviously, and we can't wait to read more of what you do. So thank you so much for being here. All right, I'm going to stop this recording right now.
If you want to hear interviews from industry pros, get first looks, and have access to endless comic content, wake up. Please wake up. You're in a coma. Your mother misses you.